As you can see, it tipped it down last night, but it's brightening up, so I thought we'd continue. Now, yesterday I made this door. So basically I cut two identical pieces on the mechanical hacksaw, and again there. And out of these pieces I cut a notch there and there, there and there, and then welded it, clamped it together and welded it together. Okay, so that makes this lip. And then the piece that we cut out of this hole went on the front, which is why I identified it earlier in the video. We'll just do a close-up of that little joint, that's all. This is quite a loose piece, and the reason for that will be evident at some point, but just to allude to it now, if we had it too tight it would jam, so you've got to allow plenty of movement for that to do that. What we're going to do on the inside of here is weld some flat around there like that to create a channel, and then we'll stuff some rolls of fiberglass in there, and that will be a perfect seal. Further details of this, of course, are in my book. We're just having a go at the hinges. I've cut two bits of fairly thick steel here, clamped them together, drilled a hole through them, and two bits of box section, done the same. So theoretically they're all in line. So what we're going to do is that bit of weld will get ground, and that will come over there. There's a lip here at the moment, so we shall cut that off. Effectively what happens is that gets welded on there, and that gets welded on there. What we do to make life easy is all four parts of the hinges get put on this long bolt. So it goes all the way through everything, so everything lines up. Then we can lay the stove on its back, put the door exactly where we want to it, offer all this lot up, and then weld it in place. Bearing in mind, well, we'll tack weld all the hinges, bearing in mind we've got a degree of movement, so we don't need to be absolutely precise, but we need to be fair, middling, reasonable. Here's the door, and we've put this piece of flat in there. We've got some fiberglass. It's quite soft stuff, this. There are different grades of it, so to see. So we just poke that in there. What happens is, over a period of time, this beds in and creates just the perfect seal, and it's very easy to replace. That goes on there like that. So we'll just try and fit the hinges. We've got this piece of box section there just to support things in the interim. That needs to be flat against there, and that needs to be flat against there. Fiddly. That there will be supported by that, because that's the top, so the weight is going that way. So I'm just going to tack this. So that's just tacked in place, and there we go. One airtight seal once we've got a catch on there, and it runs very smoothly. Here we are, stove in place in the workshop with about 6-inch flue on it. Okay, important flues are very important, the chimneys. They make a huge amount of difference to the performance of the stove. So therefore, once the heat comes out of the stove, you want to lose as little as possible. This stove is designed to burn quite hot, so we're losing a bit of heat there. But once it gets into the flue, it's insulated, and it's that heat that drives the draft of the chimney. And you want those gases to get away out of the chimney as soon as possible to avoid condensation, deposits of tar and all that sort of thing. There's a lot more to be said about that and the quality of firewood, but I think we'll have a little rant about it a bit later on. So we've got this piece of steel here with a hole in the end and a bolt, and there's a washer on the outside and there's a washer in there between the piece of steel and the door, so that it doesn't drag all the way along here. Then this is just a bit of flat that's bent at quite a sharp angle, like that, either end, cut off and welded in place. Now the bottom here is the important bit, because you don't want this to drop down too far. If it drops down too far, it just bangs against the end of this catch. But watch this. So that's a nice slope, and the bar starts there and just rises up. So effectively, this is just a bit of flat cut at an angle, tacked on, and then adjusted. And once it's adjusted so it rises, close the door, mark it, and then cut the notch with the angle grinder when you're happy with everything. So that's a good catch. What I think I ought to do really is put something on the end, a bit of spring or something, so that when the stove's nice and hot, you can still lift that without fear of burning. Got a slight design fault there. That angle there isn't quite steep enough, and so therefore it catches it. Here's the chimney damper, and I put a piece of spring on there just so that you can pick it up easily, so it stays cool. So that's a good action. The air inlets here and here, they have a slider that goes across like that. So I'll take the door off the stove just to make this a bit clearer, and undo this nut here. So this is just a flat piece, flat bar, a hole drilled one end and a bolt put through. And when we did this original frame, we put 4 bits of angle iron together, and this piece here, that step there, is the inner edge of that angle iron. So this flat bit just runs on there like that. Okay? But given just that, it would fall off. So what we've done is this washer here is above the level of this flat steel. So if you put that there and something to pack it out, and this nut, then immediately that can't pull out. So that locates that end. Coming round the other side, we've got the washer that we took off earlier and the nut. But as you see, the nut this side is inside the slot, and the top of it is a little bit higher than this door surface. So that's that. What I did was I measured everything out for this slot, and then drilled either end, and then cut it with an angle grinder, and then fettled it afterwards. So that goes back on there, just like that. That washer stops that pushing through. The washer behind on the back side of this bolt stops it flirting out, and it runs on the top of that angle iron. So what could be simpler? You can build this with a drill and an angle grinder, which is what the idea is. And then you can fettle these and make them a bit bigger and do all sorts of things. But that's the general idea. Quite an easy action, but quite a good way of just adjusting the airflow. That stove chucks out a fair amount of heat, and I've just done a drawing here just of effectively a very thin box. If you imagine 2 bits of flat steel, maybe 3 or 4 mil thick either side, and some flat steel here, maybe inch or 3/4 by 4 mil, and you weld it all up together, you've got a boiler. And then if you put some weld-on bosses, and it's got to be weld-on grade rather than your standard plumbing grade iron bosses, and if you put a weld-on boss, let's say for instance there, and one down here, and you put that in the back of the stove, you've got a boiler. And of course the top one is the hot, and the bottom one is the not so hot. And depending how you plumb it up, you can get this to move the water around by gravity. Now, in my book, which is here, there's all sorts of plumbing designs for simple hot water systems. Anyway, I don't advertise on this YouTube channel, so therefore, well, beyond promoting my books. So if you're interested in this subject, this book covers a huge amount. From getting your own firewood, converting it, storing it, drying it, how to get the right calorific value, chimneys, plumbing systems, stove types, building your own stoves, growing your own wood, and the carbon capture of woodlands, etc. So I don't advertise. If you want to buy this book, that'll help. Now, those of you who've been paying attention will have noticed a couple of things. One, we've just got straight angle iron feet. After all that preamble about curly bits, I thought the industrial shape of this deserved just square feet, so that'll do. The second thing is, the door's quite high in the box, and I was talking about putting a grate in there, but I haven't got round to that. So therefore what I've done is I put some bricks in there with a sheet of steel, a couple of bits of odd sheets of steel actually, on the top there, just to lift the fire up. So there we go. So the steel is at about that level there, and as you see, it burns quite nicely.